You alluded to it. Chamzat Chimaev, Gilbert Burns was the fight that many were looking forward to when we went into the weekend. It absolutely delivered.
Man.
Some say it delivered above the title fights. It overshadowed it building into it, and it overshadowed it on the actual night. When you look back on that fight, when you think back on that fight, how satisfying was it to see Gilbert Burns fight in the way that he did, even though he lost, and we saw Chamzat challenge in the way that we needed to see to find out if he truly is elite of the elite.
You know, that was what that fight was about. One, you got to think of the courage and the bravery of Gilbert Burns. This is a guy who's number 2 ranked in the world. He didn't have to take that fight. And there were many people that were in between 11 and 2 that didn't want to fight with Chamzat Chimaev. And for him to stand toe-to-toe, he gets taken down in the early rounds or in the first round. He fights his way back to his feet. And then we really don't see Chamzat Chimaev wrestle or grapple the rest of the fight. He drops Chamzat Chimaev. Everybody's bleeding. And, really, when you go into the third round, it's either man's fight. And we watched them go toe-to-toe, nobody back down. I think Gilbert Burns in that fight, is one of those rare occasions where you gain respect for the loser. You look at the guy who lost the fight and you say, no, he shouldn't drop far in the rankings. Yes, he still should be in championship contention. He still is one of the elite fighters in the world. And then on the other side, we got to see Chamzat Chimaev pushed. We got to see Chamzat Chimaev hurt. And it was funny, DC, I was thinking about Rocky. And obviously the fight was never like Drago and Rocky. But when Chamzat Chimaev started to bleed, I was like, see, he is a man. He is a man. He can bleed too. Yeah. And so it was cool to see that, you know what I mean? And I think, a guy like you who was also a champion can really respect 2 men going toe-to-toe in that manner. And there wasn't even a belt on the line.
Very rarely do you go into a fight where there are so many questions on both sides, right? Can Gilbert Burns stand up to what has become the big bad boogeyman in Chamzat Chimaev? Is Chamzat Chimaev really that guy? Look, we found out Saturday. We found out every single thing we needed to know. Gilbert Burns is still the elite of the elite. Yeah. And I don't know why it was ever in question. The only way it looked like it was in question, RC, was because the odds were stacked so heavily against them. But obviously, that's why we play the game. They always say that's why we play the game. Well, Chamzat Chimaev is the real deal because he got pushed. This dude had fought 4 times, and he got hit 4 times. He got hit so much last Saturday. He got taken to places that he never intended to go, especially not to this point in his career. It's still early. It's still very early for a young fighter. And he fought the number 2 guy in the world. He got his hand raised, and he also was able to go through the fire in the sense that he got dropped, he was pressed, he was pushed, and he still won the fight unanimously across the board, I believe. I think it was 29-28 all, or did somebody score the fight for Gilbert Burns? I'm not exactly sure. I was watching with a whole bunch of Armenians, and they were all kind of hoping Chamzat won, so I wasn't able to really say, like it was a weird situation. But it was a fantastic fight, and both of these guys raised their stock in a fight where it absolutely delivered. Very rarely does a fight have that much hype on it, Ryan, and it exceeds the expectation. I thought that one did that.
DC, do you believe, though, that the hype was more about who Chamzat Chimaev could be and that he would actually either be tested or we'd watch him dominate Gilbert Burns? And in watching that fight for you, how do you now view Chamzat Chimaev as it pertains to someone like a Kobe Covington or the champion Kamaru Usman?
If I'm being honest, I honestly give him more value. It's so absurd that people are saying he was exposed. Exposed for what? Exposed for what? You just got in the game, right? Your highest level fight was against Li Jingliang. And because of the way that you beat him, you got pushed all the way up the rankings to the number 2 guy in the world who had just beaten Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who had fought for the championship against Kamaru Usman. He was not exposed, Ryan. He was not exposed. If anything, he was proven further to be a guy that is very dangerous as he gets closer and closer to the top of the division. Because now, if Dana is successful in making him in Covington, then you would imagine that he's one more win from fighting for a championship. If he can fight in the way that he did last weekend, if he can show the heart that he did to get through the situations that he got himself into last weekend, this is a guy that will be a challenge for the champ, Kamaru Usman. But no, his stock did not drop at all, because so many times we see these hot prospects, RC, get tested and they wilt and they quit and they crumble. He didn't do that. He kept pressing and he got the job done. Hats off to Chamzat.
Yeah, I think, what was amazing to me in watching it, DC, was the few times, Gilbert landed significant strikes and Chamzat would just wave his hands like, come on. And, I always wonder when I'm watching you guys, is that a little, we used to call it fifi, right? We used to call it false enthusiasm. When you really want something, or you're not really excited about something, but you fake it so everybody else feels it. So I'm watching him thinking, does he really want Gilbert Burns to keep coming forward? Does he really want to continue getting hit? And that was important to me for people to see, because we had never seen him hurt. I mean, hell, we've barely seen him get any strikes landed on him in the UFC. And so to see him take in the deep water, to see him touched up extremely early, I thought that was what people needed from Chamzat Chimaev. Like, to dominate, DC, and to beat people the way that he has early on in his UFC career is cool, right? But what do we always say about our greats? We like to see them go through wars. We want to see some of that adversity. And so, DC, is it, when you look at the way he won the fight against Gilbert Burns, I can't believe that going into it, that's what his coaches and trainers wanted, that they wanted an entirely stand-up striking match. Are you surprised that he was able to win in the fashion that he did?
Not surprised. For so long, he has relied on the wrestling. That's why he's been so dominant, taking people down and smashing them. Wasn't surprised, because if you look at their stature, if you look at the size of both men, you would imagine that Chamzat, he's the bigger guy, he's the longer guy, he's the younger guy. He would hold a lot of the advantages in the striking. Gilbert Burns is a grappler. He is a jiu-jitsu-based fighter from the very beginning of his career. Now, has he developed into a world-class striker? Yes. But he was a jiu-jitsu guy. Chamzat is a big wrestler, but he has shown on multiple occasions massive power in his hands.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that the fight went as long as it did, and he wasn't able to get him out of there, especially when he hurt him. When he hurt him with the jab and he dropped him, I thought he would back off and he would get back to trying to land that punch, but he never seemed to go back to it. He was content with being in the battle and he threw a lot of uppercuts in tight and just kind of loading up to try to get Gil out there, when in reality, he hurt Gilbert when he really just let it flow and he landed that monster jab that put him on his butt.